The lights of the theater dimmed slowly, and a low murmur rippled through the audience as anticipation filled the air. Cameras glided silently across rows of excited faces, judges adjusted their seats, and backstage, hopeful singers took deep breaths, clutching dreams that had lived in their hearts for years. For Simon Cowell, this moment was always familiar. He had seen thousands of auditions across America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent, yet there were rare moments, special ones, that still managed to surprise him, move him, and even change the way he looked at music itself. Simon leaned back in his chair, arms folded, his expression neutral but attentive. He was known for his sharp tongue, his brutal honesty, and his impossibly high standards. Many feared him. Some hated him. But every singer who stepped onto that stage secretly wanted the same thing: to hear Simon Cowell say, "That was brilliant." Those words, when they came, carried more weight than any trophy. The first singer walked onto the AGT stage with hesitant steps. She was young, barely in her 20s, dressed simply, her hands shaking as she introduced herself. Her voice trembled as she spoke, revealing a story of working long hours at a diner, singing only when the restaurant was empty and the chairs were stacked upside down on tables. Simon watched closely. He had heard stories like this before, but he had also learned that sometimes, behind nervous words, there could be magic. When the music began, something shifted. Her voice emerged soft and controlled, carrying an honesty that silenced the room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. But it was real. Each note felt carefully placed, as if she were opening her heart one layer at a time. Simon leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing, not in criticism, but in focus. He could sense it, the rare quality that couldn't be taught. As she reached the chorus, her voice grew stronger, richer, filling the theater with emotion. The audience forgot to breathe. Even the judges beside Simon exchanged glances. When the final note faded, there was a split second of silence, followed by thunderous applause. Simon stood up slowly, clapping, something he didn't do often. "That," he said, when the noise settled, "is exactly why these shows exist." It became one of his favorite auditions, not because it was perfect, but because it was unforgettable. Across the ocean, on Britain's Got Talent, another moment waited to be discovered. A middle-aged man walked onto the stage, his appearance ordinary, his confidence minimal. He joked nervously with the judges, earning polite smiles but little expectation. Simon raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Experience had taught him not to judge too quickly, but instincts were instincts. The man chose a classic song, one that many had ruined before. As the first notes played, Simon sighed quietly, preparing himself. Then the man sang, and everything changed. His voice was powerful, soulful, and incredibly controlled. It carried years of pain, hope, and resilience. The song felt reborn, transformed into something deeply personal. Simon's expression shifted from doubt to disbelief. He stared at the singer as if trying to understand where that voice had been hiding all these years. When the performance ended, Simon shook his head in amazement. "I didn't see that coming," he admitted. "And I'm very glad I was wrong." That audition went viral within hours, watched by millions, but for Simon, it was special because it reminded him that true talent often arrives quietly. One of Simon's most cherished auditions came from a child, no older than 10. The audience reacted with gentle "us" as the boy spoke shyly about singing in his bedroom and dreaming of big stages. Simon smiled politely but cautiously. Child singers were risky, some were impressive, others forgettable. When the boy began to sing, the purity of his voice cut straight through the room. It was clear, emotional, and far beyond his years. he didn't just sing the song, he understood it. His phrasing, his control, his emotional delivery, it stunned everyone. Simon felt something rare, genuine awe. He knew, in that moment, that this child wasn't just talented, he was extraordinary. As the final note lingered, Simon pressed the golden buzzer, showering the stage in golden confetti. The boy's eyes widened in shock as tears streamed down his face. Simon walked onto the stage, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. "Never stop doing this," he said softly. That audition became one of Simon's favorites not just because of the voice, but because it represented pure potential and innocent passion. There were also auditions that carried deep pain. One woman walked onto the AGT stage carrying the memory of loss. She spoke about losing her husband and how singing was the only thing that helped her survive each day. Simon listened quietly, his usual sarcasm absent. He had learned over the years that sometimes, music wasn't about winning, it was about healing. When she sang, her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from truth. Every lyric carried grief and strength intertwined. The audience cried openly. Simon swallowed hard. He knew that technical flaws existed, but he also knew that none of that mattered. "That was one of the most honest performances I've ever seen," he said. And honesty always wins. Some audition surprised Simon with sheer originality. A singer stepped onto the BGT stage, blending classical vocals with modern pop in a way no one had heard before. Simon loved innovation. He believed the music industry survived on people brave enough to be different. As the singer transitioned effortlessly between styles, Simon smiled widely. "You've created your own lane," he said. "And that's very smart." Then there were the singers who reminded Simon why he fell in love with music in the first place. A street performer, used to singing for spare change, delivered a raw, bluesy performance that felt timeless. Simon tapped his fingers on the desk, nodding along. "You don't need this show," he said afterward. "This show needs you." Over the years, Simon Cowell's favorite singing auditions weren't always the loudest or the most technically flawless. They were the ones that told a story, the ones that carried truth, risk, and vulnerability. They were moments when the world stopped for a few minutes and listened. Each audition left a mark on him. Some reignited his belief in talent. Others reminded him of humanity. And a few changed lives forever, not just for the singers, but for everyone who heard them. As Simon sat behind the judges' table, watching yet another hopeful walk onto the stage, he knew that somewhere, hidden among nerves and dreams, another unforgettable voice was waiting. And when it arrived, he would recognize it instantly. Because true talent doesn't need permission. It announces itself, softly or powerfully, and stays with you long after the final note fades.